occasionally when we're designing a project and, you know, we sort of lay out the building according to the architectural drawings, and we sort of, you know, utilized, you know, the configuration that the architect had in an original layout. And then in the 11th hour, occasionally the architect might change a bay size from, let's say, 30 feet to 30 feet 6. And it's a convoluted, you know, building layout where you just can't, you know, stretch a dimension easily. What happens is that we would just change that dimension to reflect, you know, the revised layout for the columns and, you know, the relationship for the building, but we don't necessarily change our, you know, our plans in you know, the documents. So, and occasionally what happens is that, you know, the contractor wants to lay out, you know, the building according to our foundation plans. And our foundation plans might be off by a couple inches here or there. And if they use our drawings to lay out their plans, and we know our plans are not accurate, it would be difficult for us to give them that information. So, you know, it's one of those kind of things where as long as we tell them that, you know, our plans are not accurate and, you know, there might be some dimensional discrepancies associated with the actual layout versus the required dimensions, then, you know, we don't care. You know, we would, you know, give him, you know, our drawings, but, you know, reflect to him that, you know, there are some discrepancies, or there could be some discrepancies that exist, and that he has to sort of verify, you know, the layout as he's going along. So he just can't blindly use our drawings because of the fact that there were minor modifications that occurred during, you know, the design or at the end of the design, you know, phase, where we didn't have enough time to actually reconfigure our entire building to reflect these changes. So
in this case with Wiedemann, what he's asking is there an obligation by the consultant, in this case the engineer, to provide the information for which he's been paid to the client? I don't know that we can fully adjudicate that unless it was made as a complaint. But the reality of it is, I think he has every obligation to give his client what he was paid for.
correct.
And if it's correct, it's correct. If he's worried about whether or not the contractor will do it according to plan, that's easy enough to prove. Go out and take an elevation or take a measurement and determine if he did it according to your plan.
Right.
You know, that's all there is.
But a lot of times they just blindly use, you know, the actual, you know, AutoCAD or CAD configuration without verifying the fact that they are accurate.
That's understood,
Tony,
but that's not.
Tony,
that's
can
not
I
what,
jump in?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to jump in with my contractor hat on,
Yes, sir.
because that is the industry that I'm working in. And Richard, you're 100% right. That's what we see every day, because we go through this exact situation per this email. I mean, we do job after job, and every job, the first thing we do is request the CAD files, because we do use those CAD files to create our layout, create our data to base our layout upon. And there's a couple things that we consistently see. And actually, let me back up. To get those CAD files, pretty much every time we have to sign some kind of waiver. That owner, the client, whoever we're working for, makes us sign some kind of waiver that I'm not sure what protection it provides people giving documents. But I will tell you this, we get the documents consistently, and unfortunately, we have to do just what Richard said, is double check this, check that, marry the architectural to the structural to the civil, and do all that checking, that quality control, which, as a side note, I think is wrong, because as designers, I think designers owe their client a complete coordinated design, and that's not happening. And as a contractor, the contractor owes execution of the design, not coordination of the design, not completion of the design, which is what oftentimes we're pushed into, is coordination and completion of design, which I don't agree with. But so that's one issue that Richard brought up, and it's real. The designs are not consistently coordinated. The second issue that comes up that we see a lot of times is is the civil engineer will not completely finish the documents. And the best example of that is with the grading. They will not, I don't remember the term that's used, but pretty much, I don't know what percentage of time, it's more than half the time. We get the civil documents with the grading drawings, and the grading is not, it looks good on the paper drawing, but when you dive down to the layers, the substance is not there. So we almost have to fill in the blanks for the grading as well. And so I guess that's another example of where we cannot simply get the CAD files and go out and lay out the building or lay out the site right off those CAD files. There is work that needs to be done to those to make it a working pile of information and data that we can use in the field. Again, I don't agree with that, but I'm wondering if that's the root of this email is, is this firm, again, saying, hey, now I got to finish these documents 100% versus having something that looks good on paper. And that will cause them extra work to deliver the product to their client.
Well, Rob, when I read this letter, my impression was that I'm going to just use a simple analogy here of they're laying out a football field, and there was a grading plan to be done. He provided the CAD file, gave it to the laser operated dozer operator, and there should be no reluctance in giving that. I understand what you said, but I don't think that's the issue here. It's a matter of, are you entitled to obtain the information which you paid for? When, in your example, if you go to implement it and it turns out that at the edge of the boundary of the site, you're 2 feet high based on the plan that he gave you, well, let's just look at the CAD file you gave me. You called for elevation 100 and the ground is 98. I got a problem. So that's proof in the pudding, so to speak, when you implement it. But the only way you can know that is if the designer provided you his file. If he did it on paper, he would do the same thing, and you would then have to interpret the paper and lay it out yourself, or have him do it. But I think that's the case right here. Is you as the contractor, you need to have that file, and you paid for it. How that gets transmitted is another issue. But are we able to say you must give it to him? That's a contractual issue that I don't think we can resolve here. But I believe personally that the engineer has an obligation to give it to the client for implementation, whether he gives it to him on paper or he gives it to him in a digital file. He's obligated to provide it. Is that the question we have here?
Well, Tony, let me just address one thing from a surveying standpoint. And our minimum standards require that under drafting standards, Article 5, that the mapping and mapping features be depicted at an accuracy of 1/40th of map scale. Remember that figure from years ago? A lot of maps are 40 scale, a lot of maps are 20 scale. There's a reason for that. And if you take a paper drawing, you can rely on it to be 1/40th of scale. If you give that CAD document to a licensed individual, licensed surveyor or licensed engineer, they probably will realize that it's drawn to 1/40th of scale. There's certain tolerances that we work within when we take our field measurements. Now, here's what happens, and you see this with the assessors all the time. Assessors will prepare a map that is then used for property line determination, and the assessor's maps were never intended to be done that. Same thing happens with our drawings. You give that document to a contractor or an individual, and he's going to zoom in on it, and he's going to say, oh, well, that tree you located, an old apple tree, is I've measured it 0.0006 feet from the edge of my foundation, whatever. He comes up with some crazy dimension, which he then uses as a dimension to offset and build a garage or something from some apple tree you showed. And you see what I mean? So if you give it to a licensed individual, a licensed surveyor in particular, they're going to know that the minimum standards say X, Y, Z. If you give it to an individual, they invariably zoom in on it because it's on CAD and use it for a purpose it was not intended to be used for. That's where the problem is. And I think that's the rationale for giving it to licensed individuals in our discussions from years ago.
So in response to this inquiry, then you would say that unless there's a licensed surveyor operating the front end loader, he's not going to be able to build his project. That doesn't make sense.
No, I appreciate the problem, and I think as a practical matter, these do end up in the hands of contractors and excavators. Of course they do, and they should be. But I think they've got to realize that they're through a notation on the plan or some kind of a warning that you know, our surveying methodology is done to A2 standards, A1 standards, or T2 standards for topo, and that means a certain amount of inaccuracy will be there, and you can't just zoom in on something and expect a 2-foot contour interval to be accurate to 1/4 of a foot. You know, it's got certain tolerances, plus or minus the half the contour interval. So how do we handle that? Because the practical matter is, I agree with Tony, what you said initially, these things are routinely being given to contractors. I see it from individual, you know, architects and engineers that we provide surveys to. And I'm not sure, I think a proper warning or notation should be required on the plans.
And I agree with that in terms of, you know, we don't mind giving them our drawings and we don't mind them using our drawings. It's just that, you know, the accuracy might not necessarily be 100% in terms of there will be some discrepancies that occur based upon, you know, modifications or changes that occur late in the game that we just don't have enough time to change our entire drawing and, you know, reflect those changes versus, you know, just changing a dimension to reflect, you know, the required dimension and make it correct. But the actual, you know, layout between, you know, point A and point B could be off by 2 or 3 or 4 inches or whatever type of thing.
Well, I don't think that's the issue here.
All
I
right,
don't think,
but, you know,
I don't think it's a
again,
matter of the accuracy here. He's just looking for support as to whether or not he's obligated to provide the information one way or the other. If the consultant doesn't provide the information to somebody, then there was no sense in being a consultant. You know,
Right.
why did you do the work if you weren't intending to give it to somebody? So
Well,
the engineer designs the athletic field. It has to be implemented on site. He has to provide the information. And if it happens to be disseminated via digital format somehow, that's another issue. That's not the issue in this inquiry. The inquiry is whether or not he has an obligation to provide it.
You know, I think everybody is agreeing here that it's become standard industry practice to provide this stuff, but from a board's viewpoint, can we legally say to do that? Or is this
No.
something we can't answer?
That's what I agree, Al. I don't think that's the question here. It's not a matter of accuracy or changing a design, you know, midstream. It's a matter of whether or not an individual has an obligation to provide the information. That's a contractual issue, that's not our purview at this point.
That's what I'm coming up with, yes.
Tony, I had the discussion with an engineer that was associated with this Wedman, and the surveyor that did the work is referring to our declaratory ruling and saying, no, I cannot, because the board does not allow me to do that. And so I think that I agree that they have the right to the files, to the CAD files. And he's relying on our paragraph number 4 in our declaratory ruling. And he's saying, I can't give it to you. And I think that your opening statement that our ruling is, you didn't use the term archaic, I don't think, but it needs to be updated.
Yeah.
And we should do a new declaratory ruling. And if we want to change that, and we can release it, and we could put a warning statement on it,
Yeah.
Kurt, and
Yeah.
just say that, you know, not use at your own risk, but, you know, these have certain limitations. A lot of plans that we take through planning and zoning, they get modified at every meeting, and it's usually safe to have on the plan, not for construction purposes, for approval only or for review only. And you carry that all the way through the approval. And then we release our CAD files to the client. And I'm sure he passes it on to the contractors.
Yeah.
And it's as it, you know, you've made changes on it for the 6 months that it's taken to get it approved, and you're changing yours, and sometimes the architectural plans lag behind. We give CAD files to the landscaper, and we'll go out on the site, and the only plan that the contractor has is the landscaping plan. And it's, but I agree that it's contractual, but with all of my clients, you know, they have the right to their files, and I usually provide them.
You know, if you read that, the fourth paragraph again, you know, it says very clearly, it says, they shall only be released to licensed design professionals working cooperatively on a project as part of a design team. You know, the objective was that we would be giving it, and surely as a surveyor, you develop a topographic map. The architect can't do his design until he has the base topo. He's not going to sit there and trace it, because all of a sudden we've lost all of our accuracy. But you know, I just don't see how the individual right now can stay in business if he doesn't provide the information. So now it comes down for him to decide how best to convey it. So convey it to the architect for the project. You've met your declaratory ruling obligation. But I don't know how we can respond to it, quite honestly. Right.
Well, again, as Bob said, and just to repeat what I said, I think we should come up with some kind of a warning that needs to be issued on these drawings that are just disseminated. And in Richard's case, you know, if the vector drawings on his plans don't match the dimensions because the dimensions have been changed, and we see that all the time. And with a structural engineer plan that comes through, it's not going to match the architectural plan in most cases, and the dimensions are what you always hold. You know, that's at least what we find, and we're told by many structural engineers, don't go by the CAD drawing, or go by the dimensions because of changes that, as Richard pointed out. But we have to come up, I think, with some kind of a notation to just warn people, because these drawings are getting into the hands of all kinds of people who just don't have a clue, and they tend to zoom in on it and just take it for face value, literally. The vector drawings shown on the plans are 100% accurate to decimals that we never intended them to be accurate to.
Right. Well, we typically ask for the PDF with dimensions. The drawing file, the digital file, the CAD file is a tool, again, in implementing the project. But the verification is you have to compare the dimensions. And I think, well, in our practice, the one we get from the structural engineer is the last say.
I
That's
agree.
what's being implemented.
I agree with you. Yeah, we do too.
Yeah.
All right.
Tony,
So,
Tony, if
Yes,
I
sir.
could make a comment, we find ourselves providing CAD drawings to contractors, our clients' contractors, a number of times, and whether it's for a subdivision design or a site plan, we're doing both the civil engineering and the surveying for the client. We feel we've got an obligation to provide this information because, like you said before, we've been paid for this. Sure, we'd like to be the one that's going out there and staking out the project, but the contractors have the equipment where they can handle that without all of our services. We do provide a CAD drawing. Usually it will block out the title block, but it will have the appropriate dates and the last date, the revision date. So if there's some changes that occurred by other consultants after the date of our plan, well, it's the contractor needs to be aware of those changes. So we have not had a problem, but I think it's a responsibility that we as
civil engineers, land surveyors, we need to bear. And I feel that, yes, some notation would be appropriate, but this is a procedure that we've been following.
If I could jump in, one thing on that too, we had a situation where by giving the CAD drawing with our title block and with our border, we had an instance where a local architect took that and added another revision to the revision line, just under our own revision, added parking spaces, added changes to the building, submitted it to the local town boards, got it approved. I found out about it through the newspaper. I said, you know, we haven't worked on this job in years, and here our plans just were approved for a revision to a commercial center here in town. And we hadn't worked on it in years. And so I investigated and found out that this architect had actually put in a revision line, just same lettering as us on our thing, got it approved, no signatures, of course, because it was the CAD. And
Yeah.
everyone approved it at zoning, went through public hearings, the whole thing. So I say all this because I've started to not provide the title block and the border and just give them the model space information on this, because that will avoid this problem of them just adding a revision line and changing the title and adding a portion of the building and adding parking spaces and submitting it. Just a thought.
Yeah, that protects you if in fact the change that was made was incorrect, but he took advantage of you regardless.
Yeah.
He did.
And this is an architect I've done business with for 30 years, and my daughter used to work for him. My daughter's an architect now, and got some of her apprenticeship from them, her firm, this guy's firm. So it was not good.
Well, how do we respond to this individual, Mr. Wiedemann, if we have to in any way? And I think it's a simplistic issue here in that it comes down to the contract relationship between the consultant and the client. And to suggest that by the declaratory ruling that he can't provide information, then he has to find a means in which he can provide it. I'd have to think about how to respond.
Well, Tony, don't you think we should come up with some kind of a modification of this? Not today, but I mean, come up with a modification of this declaratory ruling from March 1st, 2010 and issue that. And in the meantime, I mean, I don't think our board has a choice but to abide by our declaratory ruling until we modify it, which may take a month or whatever until we can hash it out.
Right. Well, we're still subject to the regulations as far as seals and signatures. You know, that's the difficulty, because our regulations aren't going to change.
Right.
Well, I think together, Kurt, we're going to have to come up with something for the fourth paragraph.
I agree.
Yeah.
So we still have to sign and seal. We have to be responsible for it. There can be negative consequences, okay? We may have to take out a few words like only.
Yeah.
It is advisable that they be released to licensed professionals. But the reality of it is it will never happen, and it can't happen anymore, or you won't be operating your business. You have to protect yourself, that's for sure. But the restriction on providing it only to a licensed professional, so that contractor doesn't have a licensed professional. The other way you can get around that is by you can provide as a surveyor, for example, if that's the issue here, to provide a couple of control lines that you provided. Now he can use those because you provided them. And he can do his layout from the control lines that you provided, rather than providing him the drawing file and say, go at it. In the case of an engineer designing a grading plan, you're done. Once you finish that grading plan, you're done. What are you going to do with it? If you don't give it to the architect or the client, what good is it? So you have to give it to him. Whether you give it to him in paper, you give it to him in a digital file, still has to be used in order to implement the design. So now you're suggesting that the engineer has to give it to the surveyor has to put up a control line, and then the machine operator can use the control line to do his layout. One more step, but it can be done. All right, well, I think we have to rework paragraph 4. I'll take a stab at it.
All right.
I think it may come out of just taking out the word only.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't think we have a response to give him right now.
I
don't know.
agree.
I don't know how to respond. I think that, he's asked for help, and he's going to press on Barbara for some kind of an answer. So,
Well, again, let's not lose sight of this. When we wrote this, that situation, it was a complaint from 2005, somewhere in there, that was fresh in our minds when we wrote this, because it was in North Stonington. Do you remember that? And one of the selectmen there hired a surveyor. This fella got a hold of the plans and modified them. He basically turned a perimeter survey into a subdivision, brought it through the North Stonington Planning Board and got it approved. And, it was all done by this individual. And he plagiarized the map, the perimeter survey map. And we were coming off that because it was a complaint brought to our board. And I think it involved a man who was a selectman in North Stonington. So we just have to remember that there is a potential for abuse, and we have to protect the public that way.
right. I also recall that it had something to do with a requirement of the town requiring the digital file to be provided so they could record it. And that became an issue of in the assessor's office, manipulating it to make it fit. But they're all related, and I agree with you. It needs to be done.
Okay.
If you ask me today at this moment, I will admit, I honestly don't know what SHP and SHX formats are.
Oh, those are the shape files.
It needs to be updated and corrected. And if those are still good and nothing's changed in that regard, we can go there.
Those files still apply to the DWG. DXF, we don't use so much anymore, but all those extensions and formats should still be included.
Right. Okay. And, when the architect tries to send me a Revit file, we don't have the capability for dealing with it.
Yeah.
So it's everything has changed. Well, so we'll have to change our paragraph.
I agree.
Yep.
And I'll be glad to help, Tony. Let's converse by email.
Yep. We'll take a stab at it, Kurt, and then send it back. Maybe later this afternoon, I'll try to give a brief response to Mr. Wiedemann, and then I'll pass it around and see what we can do with it.
Okay.
Okay. All right. I knew that would be a tough subject, so we'll see if we can resolve it. Okay, the next correspondence was from Tim Miller at NCWS, just describing the changes in the exam formats. We still have pencil and paper for structural exams. We have one more pencil and paper exam in October of 21 for PE Civil. And then pretty much everything is going digital. Then the third notice was,
I have a question.
yes, sir. Yeah, John.
Is the structural exam now not on paper?
I thought it was, but I don't know for sure.
It says here, beginning in April, it will be on. April 2022, it'll be on paper. So it's not now?
No.
They're
I don't
doing.
know.
Structural is still on paper.
It's on paper now, Barbara.
Then this isn't written very well. Okay.
Unless, John, unless they're saying there's a new 16-hour structural exam. I'm not aware of that.
Okay. It's not important.
No.
I'm just curious.
The other application, the other correspondence was a request from the
Okay, gonna have to call you back.
National Council to sign a letter of intent to provide cooperation. And the last line is funny. It goes, the signatory boards are committed to minimizing or eliminating unnecessary jurisdiction-specific licensure requirements. I wonder if we fall under that category where we insist on having the 4-year degree and no waivers. And that's what it really comes down to.
Well, and also for the surveyors, we have a state-specific portion of the exam. That's what I was thinking about as I read this. I mean, I don't
And
think
I
we should
think-
waive that.
Yeah, we're not the only ones that do that.
Right.
So it's a little bit difficult to comply with all the whereases. They
I
say,
don't think we follow the structural, I mean, the civil, professional engineering part falls into that because I think we follow the model law. The others are the ones that are making unnecessary specific changes. There's been a circulation on ASCE on a question and answer, one of these chat type things on this very topic. And I've been tempted to write in and then I think, well, no, I won't bother. But it's all about trying to have national licensure rather than having individual states do their own.
Right. Well, from a surveying standpoint, again, I think that's problematic because Connecticut surveying methodology with meets and bounds descriptions is entirely different than what you do in Ohio, the rectangular system.
right.
So,
And
All
they-
nice on paper, but it isn't something that's going to be too feasible to have a national one so that you don't have to have individual states do it. I don't see how it'll work.
Is there a problem with signing it and agreeing to work cooperatively? But it's just it's a hollow statement, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think the most substance is the second to the last resolved statement where it says everything shall be model law. Shall be, model law engineer, model law surveyor, and model law structural engineer. So as long as they're model law, then you have a uniform, method of evaluating somebody's credentials. And I think that was the strongest statement that I saw was that second to the last paragraph of resolved in terms of, if everything's model law, then there should not be all these little irregularities that occur.
That
Okay.
makes sense.
So is there a consensus on signing the letter of intent?
Go for it.
Yeah, I think that is, based upon that one paragraph,
Okay,
if that's, the defining paragraph, I think that once you deviate from that paragraph, you're no longer model law. And, it's no longer consistent with, our view of engineering and surveying practices, I think.
okay. So is there a motion to authorize signing the resolution of cooperation?
So move.
Thank you, John.
Second,
Thank you, Richard. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. And our last item of correspondence was from the NCWS President Christopher Knotts. It's an international agreement. They're just pointing out that because NCWS already has a process for reviewing degrees from engineering programs that are not accredited by ABET, they didn't feel that they could provide direction to member boards on accepting degrees from Washington Accord programs. So our National Council doesn't suggest that we do that. Therefore, I think it's open-ended, but is there an opinion about it? In other words, it comes down to Korea, Russia, Malaysia, China, South Africa, a whole list of countries, et cetera. So if we're not ABET accredited, we're not interested. That's what they're saying. Am I correct in my assessment? I think what they're saying, especially just summarize the last paragraph. Look, if we don't have NCAAS evaluating our educational programs, then if we don't have that protection, then we're at risk. And therefore, we should just stay with our standards now established by NCAAS and continue with the evaluation from that service, rather than blindly accept evaluations of these other Washington Accord countries.
Yeah, we should maintain NCAAS standards
Right.
and have them provide either the process or the review.
Right. That's the guidance they're giving us, so we're going to stay with it.
Correct.
Should we make a motion to accept the guidance provided in the June 7th memo from David Cox, Executive Officer?
So moved.
Thank you, Richard.
Second.
Thank you, Robert. So all those in favor of the motion to accept the guidance from David Cox, Chief Executive Officer, regarding the Washington Accord, say aye.
Aye.
All right. I think that moves us on to our, why don't we do the minutes next, because that involves our surveying group, so they can go back to work after we do the applicants. But regardless, we have our minutes from April 20th, was held via Zoom. Is there any additions or corrections to the minutes as presented?
I'll move approval.
Thank you, John.
A second.
Thank you, Robert. All those in favor of accepting the motion, the minutes as presented dated April 20th, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I abstain, I wasn't there.
We have one abstention from Mr. Regina. Thank you, sir. All right. Then we have our investigation summary, which is pretty slim.
Yeah.
But I don't know how to interpret it. It's just zeros across the board,
Right.
meaning no change from last month, I suppose.
Mr. Chairman, if I might.
Oh, you here? Thank you.
Yes, no, this is Janita Hamel. My apologies. I was having Zoom issues getting into your meeting earlier. We did receive one new complaint that is being investigated. And we have not closed any files.
Good.
For Mr. Regina, because I know he's brought this up in the past, we have reached out to our IT group to try to have them amend the reports so that it would be a rolling tabulation instead of the fact that when I run the reports between the meetings for those 2-month timeframes, it only pulls up whatever is new or what was closed during that time. So from March 1st, 2021 to April 30th, 2021, that's all it pulls in. And I know it's in the past, you're a board, you're not the only board or commission or council. We have reached out to our IT group and requested that the reports in the system be amended so that it will show how many we have open that we are still investigating and how many are open but referred to legal, awaiting action through the legal department, whether by settlement agreement or compliance meeting with a step down with one of your members, or finally to a full hearing in front of the individual boards. Unfortunately, that has not happened yet, but we are asking for it because everybody's looking for something like that.
Okay. Thank you for the progress. All right, anything else, Janita?
No, sir. That's pretty much all that I have. So we keep after the IT group, and hopefully for your sake and everybody else's sake, they will come through at some point in time. I have no timetable for that.
Okay. All right, appreciate it.
You're
Thank
quite
you.
welcome. Other from that, I'm going to wish you all a good 4th of July.
That's right. That's good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara.
Okay. So now I think we'll move on to our regular agenda, and we're going to skip over to the few items of surveying that have been identified to help Kurt and Ken. And we have a nice summary from Kurt to follow, which was our applicants for class 12 license, which was Juan Loville, class 12.
Right, motion for approval of Lovell under class 12.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Ken. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing on that, motion carries. St. Peter, Alex St. Peter, he passed the FS exam and now he's looking for class 12.
Right, motion for approval of St. Peter under class 12, 14A, right?
Excuse me, 14.
Yeah, 14A.
Yep.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ken. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? I'm an aye too. Hearing none, that motion carries. All right. And then there was an applicant for a corporate license for the First Order LLC.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Ken.
Second.
Thank you, Robert. This guy's a real shoemaker. All those in favor of the motion to approve First Order LLC as a corporate practice of land surveying from Pennsylvania, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. On our supplemental agenda, we had two items. One is Johnny K. Maxwell for Class 8 exam.
Motion for approval under class 8 reciprocity, credit part 1.
Second that motion.
Good. He had a, what is it? Disciplinary action for what was it?
Yeah, that was quite interesting. I went on the Alabama website, state website for that to find it, and I emailed it to you guys. But interesting. Apparently, he opened offices in different towns using the name of the town. For example, he'd have Greenwich Land Surveyors, he'd have Stanford Land Surveyors, he'd have Wilton Land Surveyors, and the website all bounced back to his parent company. And the state board didn't like that. I guess they require that each location have a licensed land surveyor there. at that address. So he ended up with 6 months probation and $500 fine for doing that. Made me think, where would that, what would happen if what would happen if someone did that in Connecticut? I'm not sure how we'd handle that.
Yeah, interesting.
You'd be paying a lot of rent.
No, these are websites. These are websites.
Just strictly websites?
I know, Kurt, is it any different than purchasing a firm and putting your phone number on it? You know, you buy a firm in Stonington and it comes back to your office. Is there any difference? You bought the records.
I'd have to think about that.
Yeah. Well,
What if you advertise statewide? Same result, right?
Well, he had a parent company. What was the name? I can't remember the name of it right now, but I'm looking it up here. But it all bounced back to anyway. He had his principal company, which is where he really did business. Everything routed you back to that, and he had a statement on each of the websites. Let's see, what did he say here? Okay, so for example, in Montgomery, Alabama, we had Montgomery Land Surveying, which at the time included the following language on the website. Montgomery Land Surveying is owned and managed by J. Keith Maxwell, a licensed professional civil engineer and land surveyor in Alabama. And then it bounces you to Pro 17 Engineering LLC, which is the parent company. So it was a spider web.
yeah. Well, they had a good idea. They just didn't like it. So
Again,
on the
I don't
go.
know where that would fall in Connecticut. We'd have to think about it if we're confronted with it.
Yeah. So we have I honestly lost track as to whether or not we took a vote on that, but it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of the motion to approve J. Keith Maxwell for Class 8 exam, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. And the last one was for Mr. Gers for he passed his exam, right? He passed the test, so prove him as an engineer, a surveyor in training.
Yes, I make a motion for to okay Gers under Class 13.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor of the motion to approve Luke Gers for Class 13, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Okay. I think that completes our surveying items on both agendas. And with that, if you so desire, you are excused, and I appreciate your contribution and participation today.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Kurt. Thank you, Ken.
Yes, have a good 4th of July.
Yes.
See you guys later. Have a good Fourth.
Thanks.
Hey,
Bye.
guys.
Okay. As we move on to our regular agenda, we had item D, that was just candidates who took and passed the CBT exams through June 1st. So that's just an item of notification on D. That brings us to our applicants on page 4 of our regular agenda. John DeWolf reviewed Michael Hanna for Class 1 exam.
He has passed the EIT. There is a form stating he has the EIT. I can't hear Barbara. We've lost Barbara's audio.
Yeah, Barbara's muted. You want to unmute Barbara if you can? All right, John, you want to make a motion as though he has the EIT?
Yes, I move that Mr. Hanna be approved with credit for part 1.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Bob. All those in favor of approving Michael Hanna for Class 1 Credit Part 1, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. I reviewed the first applicant under Class 1 Credit Part 1, Brian Pelotti. He has a Yukon BS in electrical engineering in 09, so I would accept the motion to approve Brian Pelotti. Piotr.
So move.
Thank you, John. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Richard. All those in favor of the motion to approve Brian Piotr, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. John DeWolf reviewed Black, Deuster, Santiago, and Shearing for Class 1 Credit Part 1.
Mr. Dusler needs this month to get the 4 years, which is okay by me. Mr. Santiago has no ability to do addition. He only sums up 3 years and some odd months when he has lots more to sum up. I don't know what's wrong with his math, but he's fine. So based on all that, I move that all 4 be approved for Class 1 Credit Part 1.
I'll second.
Second. Thank you, Al. All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries.
Can you guys hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Yep.
Welcome back. The issue on the first one, Barbara, was that Michael Hanna has an EIT according to what John has in his file. So that was the only change if you didn't hear it.
Okay, I'll double check on that. Thank you.
Okay. Then Bob Doan reviewed Akai, Ferris, Gunderson, and Jaroszewski for Class 1 Credit Part 1.
Okay, on Akai, Barbara, was there any summary by NCEES on the reviews? I have this guy had a Bachelor of Science, a master's, and a undergraduate, and they have everything was sent to NCEES, but I don't have a summary.
Let me check.
Okay. In going through and adding up the courses, it seems equivalent to me. And I'll go out on a limb and say it is equivalent or close enough. And I'll include them, but I would like to verify with a summary if possible. Or try.
In this case, NCS did not do a summary. They just verified the degree, and that's what they did. That's what that first page was. So they took what was sent to them and approved all the approved the transcript. Let's put it that way. They didn't do the whole evaluation.
No, they didn't.
They did not.
So they just accepted his courses? Is that
Correct.
okay? If they accepted the courses, then I'll include him in a motion to approve all 4.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Al. All those in favor of the motion to approve Akai, Ferris, Gunderson, and Jaroszewski, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. I reviewed Mariana Hobson, formerly Maharina Burnham. Back in 2019, we advised her that she didn't have enough experience. She has now gained the appropriate experience following her technology degree in 2014. So I would accept the motion, or recommend a motion to approve Ms. Hobson for Class 2 exam credit Part 1.
So move.
Thank you,
Second.
Robert. Thank you, John. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. And Rob Lewandowski reviewed the next group of Class 4 applicants for reciprocity on page 4 and 5 from Ayatai down through Sutherland on page 5.
I'm gonna make a motion to, or I'm sorry, recommendation to approve them all, but I just wanted to highlight 3 of them. 3 of them that were not model law. The first one, Samira Ayata, was not a model law. She had a foreign degree. It was short on, it said biology or chemistry, either or. And her bachelor's was from University of Tehran. That's what was evaluated. And then in addition to the evaluated coursework, she has a master's degree from Columbia. So in my mind, she was short biology or chemistry in her base degree, but add on top of that a Master of Science in Civil Engineering from Columbia. In my mind, she was okay, educationally speaking. The second one was Shishang Han, was also a foreign degree, and he had no deficiencies. So that's pretty straightforward in the evaluation. The third one was Anant Panwalker. Also a foreign degree, not model law, was reviewed by NCAS and found to be 11 credit hours short in general education, but had extra 11 credits in engineering science, plus another 31 credits extra in other technical courses, plus on top of all that, a master's degree in civil engineering. The undergraduate was from University of Mumbai in India, and the graduate degree was from University of British Columbia in Canada. So again, I'm recommending approval for that person as well, based upon what appears to be an excess of courses above and beyond. No deficiencies on the engineering side, let's say that. So
Thank you, Robert. Is there,
any questions on any of those?
no. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Richard. All those in favor of the motion to accept recommendation of Mr. Lewandowski, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Now, Richard Swezak reviewed the next group of Class 4 applicants, Almood through Williams on page 5 of our regular agenda.
And I also have just a couple of notes to make in terms of, ultimately everybody, will get sort of approved. Mr. Ahmoud, had a degree out of Jordan, but it was equivalent to the NCAAS standards. And Mr. Japra had a foreign degree, and it also was equivalent to the NCAAS standards. And one other note is Mr. Nikita Suponya did have a misdemeanor of reckless driving in 2013, and I'm not sure, he didn't expand upon it, but I don't think that's going to prevent him from getting being a professional engineer. So I'm not sure exactly what he did for reckless driving, but and I guess in summary, I'll make a motion that we accept all 20 applications.
Okay. Thank you, Robert. All those in favor of the motion to approve Ahmood through Williams on page 4 for Class 4 reciprocity, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. I reviewed the next group of applicants from Abu Talib down through Zarino on page 5. Interesting, in this case, out of the 12 applicants in that group, only 6 were model law engineers, which was unusual in the trend right now. We did have 2 evaluations by firms other than NCAAS. One of the 3 evaluations was NCAAS, so that was different. However, at the end, they all are eligible for reciprocity under our regulations. So is there a motion to accept my recommendation?
So moved.
Thank you, Robert.
A second.
Second. Is that Richard?
Al,
Al, thank you, Al.
I just want you to pronounce that next to the last name there.
The next to last, Villa Vicencio.
Keep
All those
going.
in favor of the motion to approve, say aye. Aye.
I,
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. John DeWolf reviewed the next group of applicants for class 4 reciprocity from Bashan to Bishop on page 5 and Blankbard to Vance on page 6.
I'm going to move the approval of all of them, but I thought Bishop was fascinating. He has plenty of experience, 7 years or something, but he also put in for time before graduation when he was a cook in a restaurant. And he said, I'm not sure if cooking several meals at once is considered a project, but I learned a very valuable skill, which has made me successful in my current job. This is time management. And then he goes on to say, he also learned, the second thing he learned was communication. When you work with a team of cooks, communication has to be clear and concise. I thought that was fairly cool, but it's a good application. The only thing I wonder about is Mr. Maad, M-A-A-D. He doesn't list any experience after 2005. He has adequate experience. I guess we should just approve it.
Well, one time we asked, whether or not the individual's been doing cooking since 2005. That means a lot. At different times, we should have them. We have asked in the past to update the experience. What have you been doing? Have you lost complete touch with the industry?
Okay, well, I'll take Maad out then separately and move that we request him to complete his experience.
Yeah, I think
to the present.
it's been a while, but I know that we've done it, and I think that's appropriate in this case,
Okay.
especially since you had the cook down there. It may be, who knows?
That was as an undergraduate.
Yeah, all right.
Anyway, so I will recommend that we ask for him to update his experience form.
Is there a second to that motion to,
second,
thank you, Richard. All those in favor of the motion for Mr. Ziad Maad to provide a summary of experience since 2005? All those in favor of the motion?
aye,
Aye. Any opposed? Well, that motion carries. That leaves us with the remainder of,
One other is Newton, who was denied in 2017 in another state being licensed because he had a tech degree and didn't have enough experience. He has well over 7 years of experience now, so there's not a problem. So I will make a motion that with the exception of Maad, everybody else in the group be approved.
second?
Second.
I don't know who did that. Who did
That
that?
was Rob.
Robert. Thank you, Rob. All those in favor of the motion to approve all in that group reviewed by John DeWolf except for Ziad Maad, say aye.
aye,
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Bob Doan reviewed Bruno through Purse House for class 4 reciprocity.
I'll make a motion to approve the entire group. I'll just note that Tador Franco went to Ovidius University. First time I've ever heard of that. And he's not a model law because he was missing 3 credits, 3 hours in general education, but he had 85 hours in engineering where 48 is required. And that university is relatively new. In 1990, it started in Romania. be that as it may, the only other question is I have a Jonathan Knopp, and I was wondering if he was related to Tammy Knopp in John's group. But anyway, I'll make a motion to approve the entire group.
Thank you, Rob.
Second,
Thank you, Richard. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing on that, motion carries. Did the Knops work for the same firm? Are they twins?
My Knopp is from Boise, Idaho.
I just threw them all in the recyclable, so let me.
All right.
Oh,
No
geez.
problem.
Okay, we lost them. All right.
Our next group on our regular agenda was the Class 9 licensees. A variety of universities, which is good. So is there a motion to approve the list of Class 9 licenses from Auerbacher through Tron on page 6 and Mr. Trururen on page 7?
So
So
move.
move.
Second.
Thank you, Robert. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing on that, motion carries. We have several applications for the corporate practice of professional engineering, all reviewed by, well, the first three by Richard Swezak, Innovative Design Engineering Associate, LLC, New York Engineers, PC, and NTA Engineering, PC.
I'll make a motion that we approve all three applications and just as a note in terms of, you know, that the first, it's an associate. There's no other partners or anything involved. It's just a one-person firm. So it just seems a little different than what I would expect. So, but in that sense, I'll make a motion that we approve all three applications.
Second.
The second thinks out. As a matter of discussion, it's interesting. It certainly took note of it that it's only associate. But I suppose it could have just been engineering, Innovative Design Engineering LLC.
Right.
Unless he's planning to expand. Anyway, all those in favor of the motion to approve Innovative Design Engineering Associate LLC, New York Engineers PC, and NTA Engineering PC, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries.
By the way, Bob, my NOP is in Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay. All right. A distant relative.
Bob Doan reviewed the next group of applicants for the corporate practice of professional engineering, Allied Engineering and Design, Inc., B2R Consulting Engineers, PLLC, Orego Solar Systems, Inc., Hallowell Engineering, PA, Hayden Consultants, Inc., and K&A Engineering Consultants, PC.
Okay. I would like to first talk about Borrego Solar Systems Incorporated. They are coming in as an engineering firm. None of the owners are engineers. And it's, however, it is a corporation, and they do have a full-time employee with a Connecticut license that's going to be signing for them. And I just thought it was curious, and I went through my checklists that I have, and I don't see any restriction where the owners have to be engineers.
That's correct.
This is
Just-
Shanika.
I'm sorry, Barbara, I couldn't hear you. Can't hear you.
Right.
Oh,
Can you
there you
hear
go.
Me?
No, can't.
You're coming in and out, Barbara.
I keep coming in and out. How about now? No?
Good.
Good.
Good. All right. So primarily, this has always been the problem that the board has had for general businesses such as your S corporations or your INCs or limited companies, there doesn't have to be any type of ownership by engineers. So you
Yeah.
can have anyone owning it as long as you have a full-time or you have employees of the company that are licensed as Connecticut PEs.
Yeah.
So they do qualify under that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Those are larger firms.
And then the next one is the PA is a professional association. And that's similar to a PLLC. Even, and PA is not on our cheat sheet, but in a PA, they both have to be licensed. And they are both licensed in Connecticut. So having said all that, I'll make a motion to approve all 7 for corporate license.
Is there a second?
Second,
Second.
Thank you, John. All those in favor of the motion to approve, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Thank you, Robert.
Yep.
And I didn't read off puffer, Bob, but shall we make a separate motion? But I didn't read it into the record, so
Oh,
their
which
motion
one?
to approve Puffer Engineering Firm LLC.
Oh, so moved.
Yes,
second,
Thank you, John. All those in favor of the motion to approve Puffer Engineering Firm LLC for the corporate practice of engineering, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. And we had one reinstatement, Jim Caparanis. Continuously licensed in another state.
Okay, the only thing that's lacking in his reinstatement is a notarized letter. Or in my packet anyway.
I will send that to you, Bob.
Pardon me?
I did miss sending it to you.
Okay, is it there, Barbara?
Yes, I have it
Okay,
here. Yep.
I'll make a motion to approve reinstatement.
Second.
Thank you, Richard. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Barbara, I don't have, and I didn't see it, or pay attention yesterday on G. Can you explain that?
That's something I wanted to
If we can hear you, we can't really hear you.
now. No?
Now's okay, a little bit.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. I probably do this better at home now. I guess what I was looking to do is with these corporations, because there's so many, and I'm constantly back and forth with them, looking for additional information. I didn't know if it was all right to start approving these corporations without you looking at them first, just like we do with the EITs, unless there's a question. Do you have a problem with that? Or since they're a registration, before usually Richard and Bob end up getting these, before you guys even get to them, I've already corresponded with them once or twice just to get all the documentation, whether it's ownership or certificate of legal existence or so forth. I just didn't know if it would just save some time from both you and me of approving these corporate registrations unless there's an issue.
I would say that's fine. You look at them, you evaluate them, you put them on a list. These are the ones you have reviewed and approved, and the Secretary of State's already looked at them, right? So all that, you've got all the documentation, so.
I don't have a problem with it either, and the packets that you give us are very well organized and And there are very few questions going through, Barbara, so I think they could be administratively.
And I agree in terms of, normally it's just a matter of the definition of the corporation that they're trying to define. As long as they're consistent with their, their naming of the corporation, then, basically it with all the legwork that Barbara does, she makes sure that we have all that information there.
Yeah.
And I would still list them on the agenda like I have for the EIT registration, so at least there's a record of it. So it's listed. But also, if there is any issues that, that's not comfortable, that's for discussion, that would be put on the agenda for the board's review and discussion.
Okay. And
If
if
that's all right with you.
And if it needs a board's vote, if you just put the list on the agenda, it would be like the class 9s. We just confirm the your decisions, actually.
And if there's any issues, then I would bring that, to the board for discussion to look it over. There's some other issues. But again, a lot of the stuff that I do prior before you get the applications, obviously, is asking for more information or getting us proper information, especially like like I do with the PE applications. And just another note for something else too. I'm hoping, I think they finally changed the experience record going forward, the online experience record. So it's like the old experience record like we were used to, instead of that little graph that was very
good.
Yeah. So I'm hoping, I've seen a couple already for applicants who have been doing these online. This was just maybe changed about a week or so ago. So I'm going to see if it's working out. But it seems that they are uploading this particular document now to do the experience record. So it should be easier to follow than the ones that you've had before, especially for the examinees that are coming up. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Barbara, thank you. That moves us over to our supplemental agenda. And we start off with a class 1 credit part 1 exam applicant for Nicholas Formas that John DeWolf reviewed.
Okay, he has a physics undergraduate degree, a master's in mechanical engineering, to which he took 3 basic engineering undergraduate courses: statics, mechanics of materials, and fluid mechanics. He does not have a 4-year degree. He is nowhere near that. And so I'm going to move that he be denied because he lacks a 4-year degree. But I want to add before I do that, that part of the problem here is he took the FE in Connecticut and passed it in 2019. Because we no longer review these, they're allowed to do it, and he had no guidance back then.
And that's okay, because that's what's been stated. If he could go to any other state, do the same thing and say, look, I passed the EIT. What if he passed the EIT when he was in high school? You got to let him do it because that's the rule now. But the fact is, he doesn't follow our requirements.
So I move that he be denied for taking the second exam because he does not have a 4-year engineering degree.
Second.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second that, Tony.
Any further discussion? It's a matter of being consistent with our criteria, and that's it. So all those in favor of the motion to deny Nicholas Formas for class 1 exam due to the lack of a 4-year qualifying engineering degree. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Barbara, did he have any contact with you or just file the application?
Well, I've been having a lot of contact with different people. Usually he would have been given an EIT with his MS or his master's degree, but on those individuals, which I just approved an EIT because of the master's, he was also noted that even though he received his EIT, that in the future, any PE applications have to at least show 48 semester credit hours in engineering. So I have been notifying when I do look at applications, especially the ones with undergraduate degrees that are not in engineering, that this is what we're looking for. And I responded to an individual with an associate's degree as well, listing that the 48 hours semester hours is what the board is looking for as a basic engineering degree.
Just for the
So-
EIT.
Yeah, well, for the EIT, but further on, if they're going for the PE. So to answer John's question, I can't remember this guy contacted me or not. I've had a few that have been, and trying to state and tell them right now that the board is looking for a basic degree in engineering. Even though you may have a master's, does not mean that your undergraduate degree with your master's will qualify you to sit for the exam. So anybody who does contact me, I do give them that information.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you, John and Barbara. I looked at Danilo Senna for class 1 credit part 1. He's a UConn degree in 2015. I find his qualifications and work experience appropriate for the exam. That's my recommendation. So a motion to accept my recommendation.
So moved.
Thank you, John.
Second.
Robert, rather. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Rob. All those in favor of the motion to approve Danilo Senna for class 1 credit part 1, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, so what do we do about Mr. Segal being unable to obtain transcripts? It was a difficult application to follow, but we all have it, so what shall we do? It's for taking, well, for accrediting, I guess, taking the fact that he approved, that he passed both exams.
I don't really believe the story, what I read, at least on the agenda, that he can't get something sent on. That it doesn't sound right to me. India should be able to send on the information.
Background, I've been dealing with this individual for 8 months or more. And it's always been this back and forth and telling him that Connecticut does require the NCES evaluation. So then we came to the, we gave him the option that if India was able, if I actually had a transcript that came from India, I could forward it to NCES without it being open. But what happened is what he sent me as the transcript, which was closed and I never opened it, it was sent to him. It wasn't sent to NCES or to a Connecticut board. So when I contacted NCES, they still wouldn't accept that as well. So I did mention to him I would put this on the agenda, and until stuff opens up, it's up to the board. But right now, NCES won't evaluate anything for him until they can get the transcript directly from his school.
I think that's appropriate. I think if NCES won't evaluate it, then he should wait until they will. Do you want a motion?
Yes, sir.
I move that it be denied until we have an appropriately evaluated transcript.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Is that Richard? Thank you. All those in favor of the motion to deny the license for Mr. Segal until NCES is satisfied on the evaluation of the undergraduate or degree. All those in favor of the motion to deny, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. I think that's the right decision based on the fact that NCES doesn't want to deal with it until such time as they have all the information. Therefore, we should not either. That's good.
Yep.
We have two applicants for class 4 license from Sean Anderson and Kevin Cox, reviewed by Rob Lewandowski.
Yeah, I reviewed both of them, both model law engineer, good degrees, good experience. I recommend approval of both.
Second,
I'll second.
thank you, John. All those in favor of the motion to approve Anderson and Cox for class 4 reciprocity, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. John DeWolf reviewed Chi Chen for class 4 reciprocity.
I move approval.
Second,
Second.
all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries. Richard Swezak reviewed Joseph Jensen and Peter Lee for class 4.
I'll make a motion that we approve both applications.
Thank you.
I'll
Second.
second.
Thank you, Al. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. And Bob Doan reviewed Johnny K. Maxwell for class 4 reciprocity.
Same guy that we talked about before.
Yeah.
His problems were with surveying, not engineering. He had, he's not a model law because of the discipline that he got for the surveying aspect. But he has 22 years experience in engineering and a degree from Auburn. And I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you, John. All those in favor of the motion to approve Johnny K, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. I reviewed the last applicant in that group, Gregory Schaefer. Is a BSCE from Penn State 06. He got New York PE through 22. That's my recommendation to approve. Is there a motion to accept my recommendation?
So
I'll make the
so
motion.
moved.
Thank you, Robert. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you, John. All those in favor of the motion to approve Schaefer, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. That leaves us with some class 9 licenses for Jocelyn Conan Noon, Perry Soma, and Zinke. Is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Thank you, John. Second?
Okay.
I'll second. I'll second, Tony.
Oh, there you are, Rob. Full screen. I couldn't even see it. Full screen. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. And Bob Doan reviewed the last applicant, J.T. Pisco, for a reinstatement.
Make a motion to reinstate J.T. Pisco.
Second.
Thank you, Al. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Which completes our 2 agendas. I think we covered everything. And any new business that we need to discuss? Or should discuss? Besides, yes, sir.
I was gonna bring up the Zoom meetings, because I know everyone prefers them because it's easier, especially, for driving purposes. I mean, right now, I don't think the commissioner has an issue that we continue. Most of us are starting to come back in July 1st, and then September 1st is when they start bringing in basically everybody. So, I mean, as long as we don't have any issues, they don't have an issue right now to continue on with the Zoom, because it looks like you guys don't mind it at all.
Right,
That's all right with you, right?
That's fine.
correct.
Yeah,
You need a better speaker though, Barbara.
I know, today it's not a good day.
Is it just the system?
Yeah, like I said, this is the first time I've done the meeting inside the office. Most of the time I do it from home, so I was afraid my internet wasn't gonna be right, so I don't know what happened, so.
I think you should stay home too.
Yeah,
Well, by July 1st, we have to be in 50%, so in a pay period. So that means either 2 days in a week or a total of 5 days in 2 weeks span is what we have to be in the office, is what it comes down to. So for us, that starts July 1st. And then after that, they're gonna start bringing in people anyway. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. So
When is our next meeting?
July 13th,
What was it, July?
July 13th.
Yeah. Are you going to sign that resolution or do I sign that resolution?
Either one of us can. I can sign it if you'd like.
Yeah,
Okay.
fine with me, so just sign it and send it back.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, it's due by August 1st, but I'll get it signed.
thank you, Barbara.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
All right.
Okay.
Making the motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Here.
Thanks, Al.
Thanks, Al.
Happy 4th of July, everybody.
Yeah, happy 4th of July, everybody.
Yep.
Have a
Stay
good
healthy.
one.
Yep.
Stay healthy.
See you later.
Bye.